Your Ring doorbell is recording. Your Alexa is listening. Your spouse's attorney already knows your GPS history, your Venmo transactions, and that text that you deleted last Tuesday. In 2026, every divorce is a digital divorce. And if your lawyer doesn't understand cybersecurity, you are walking into court naked. Today, I'm sitting down with a family law attorney who carries 8 cybersecurity certifications, has uncovered 4.2 million plus in hidden assets using digital forensics, and believes your digital footprint is the most dangerous weapon your spouse has against you. This is your playbook for protecting yourself in the modern divorce battlefield. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. I'm Becky Sampson, your host, and I'm always grateful to connect with some of these amazing experts across the country and bring you them to this platform so that you can learn how to navigate the legal process of a divorce. And so today's a special episode because we are going to be talking about cybersecurity and hidden assets in a way that hopefully you get more insight. So make sure that you buckle up for this one because we're going to have an interesting show. So on today's episode of Divorcing Strong, my guest isn't just a typical divorce attorney. He's a cybersecurity certified family law litigator. CompTIA, I hope I'm saying this right, Security Plus, and ISC2 certified, Cisco ethical hacker, and a Google cybersecurity certified. He's uncovered 4.2 million plus in hidden assets through digital forensics, won 87% of contested custody cases, and has 14 years of practice. He specializes in high net worth divorce, digital privacy, and trial advocacy across the state of Illinois. And he did tell me he partners with other attorneys across the United States. His unique angle is privacy is the new luxury in modern divorce. He pursued cybersecurity credentials after watching clients struggle with monitoring, hacking, and digital evidence issues through their attorneys couldn't handle. So hopefully today's show keeps you on your toes, especially if you're dealing with difficult spouses that want to bury you in financial complexities. So welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I first of all, I want to just say thank you for all the work that you've done, and just getting certified and getting very niched in this area. I'm sure you do a lot when it comes to divorce attorneys as a divorce attorney, but cyber, really dealing with the hidden assets is becoming more and more of a problem. As I see it, at least. Is that your experience as well?
It's definitely compounding, and the lack of legal understanding or lawyers understanding it is making it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we really dive into that, tell us I love the question I always ask is, what got you into being a lawyer? And I love to hear what keeps you in it, right? And also what makes you so passionate about the work that you do now?
My grandfather was a lawyer. That turned me on to it as a kid. And then I got a clerkship when I was 16 for a divorce lawyer and sort of just latched on to him. And I'm still at the same firm this many years later. So it was, my first real job and only real job. So, I have a passion for law in general. I have a passion for understanding the technical side of things, the rules, how they apply, where the gray areas are, and things like that. Because I do think a lot of lawyers, they understand the law at some point and then they get out of practice and they are less stringent when it comes to applying the rules, the statutes, and things like that.
And so did you start in the divorce space, or is that something that you did later on?
Since being a clerk, I've been in the divorce field. I've not done any other fields of law, sort of adjacent fields of law. Family law tends to touch on a lot of things, even criminal law. Sometimes there's domestic abuse and things like that. But it's always been under the umbrella of domestic.
And so what do you like most about working in this space?
I think it's, you're dealing with good people that are going through bad, if not the worst times in their life. So I think, they're looking for a lawyer, obviously, but also sort of a support to get through this difficult time for them. And I like being able to help them and give them sort of a steady hand projection of here's how this is going to go, so that their expectations are reasonable and that they're not overpromised. And that helps give people, I think, a sense of normalcy in a time that's not normal.
Right, absolutely. I always say a lot of times on this show is, we didn't learn and be educated on this process. And when it hits, it's like, what do we do now? And it's nice to know that there's people out there that can help you navigate through that. So at what point did you, because we're really kind of talking about like the cybersecurity, at what point in your career did you realize, hey, this needs to be something that I really need to understand and dive further into?
So I've always been a privacy focused person. I've always done like the more secure email and messengers and things like that for myself. When I noticed a need for it in like the professional capacity was sometime during the early COVID days, where I just had more time to devote to side projects and education. And that's when I went down the rabbit hole of cybersecurity certifications and things, so that I could offer to clients more than just anecdotal, here's what works for me, and give actual measured advice.
And so what kind of explain to people what that means? What do the different certifications mean? And what did you learn through that, allow you to find what kind of digital assets?
Yeah, so the certifications enable you to do different things depending on what your career path is. I have an eclectic assortment of certifications that don't enable me to do anything as a lawyer, but if I decided tomorrow I want to stop practicing law and be in IT, I have the credential set to be able to do that. Each one has their own focus. So like CompTIA, you mentioned, is sort of a rudimentary skill set that puts you on your path towards, some people use it for a career in IT. Sometimes it's like a gateway to the Defense Department and working in cyber in that aspect. The Google program is very rich in content. There's a ton of, depending on what path you take, you can end up very versed in everything. So I took them all as sort of I want to know what's out there. I want to be able to have the credentials to understand and be able to speak on the subject, to be able to educate people that I work with. And there's no shortage, I think, of YouTube professors out there. What I think differentiates people is, do you have the education? Do you have the credentials set? So I wanted to make sure I did.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing you saying is that there's not a lot of attorneys that have done that and gone that way and are specialized in that kind of, because it's not necessarily a legal thing. It's just an extra bonus that you know how to do those kind of things and find the hidden assets. Is that correct?
Yeah, saying there's not a lot is a bit of an understatement. I think, what I've come across is there are lawyers that handle like incident response. So if a Fortune 500 company has a data leak and they have to offer like credit monitoring, or they give money back or something, there are lawyers that's their niche. That's what they do. And then there are some cybersecurity lawyers that assist corporations in structuring policies and stuff like that. I have not come across a litigator that's using cybersecurity certifications to enhance the litigation experience. But in family law, there is an overlap between these two, or I have forged one, and I found it to be beneficial for myself and for clients.
Well, and what did you say? I mean, it seems to me, and this is just my perspective, and maybe it's because I'm interviewing a lot of people in this, but it seems like contested divorces, although it would be great if we could, do the collaborative, but contested divorces now, and especially with the digital world, is becoming more and more challenging for people to track the information or to stay on their toes enough to be able to find the information. Are you finding that is a really tough thing for a lot of people because they feel like they don't have the tools necessarily to find it?
So it's both. It's getting harder to track information, to track money movement, to track hidden assets. And at the same time, on the complete other side of that, it's too easy to find information about people. It's too easy to find metadata on files and find where somebody took a picture, what time they took the picture, who edited a document and when it was edited and on what kind of machine it was edited on. So it's both. And this is a dangerous buzzword to throw out right now, but AI is complicating it on both sides of the equation because now everybody is an expert on everything. And it's a cat and mouse game a little bit when it comes to cybersecurity and how AI affects that. But the short answer is it's both. It's certain things are harder now and certain things are easier.
So are you saying that sometimes people end up doing a lot more investigation work because of AI?
No, I think it's just it's explaining concepts to people that they may not have understood before. It's telling them what to look for, where to look. It's helping people to understand sort of otherwise difficult to understand concepts, and it's just making the information itself more easily ascertainable and understandable.
Yeah. So what do you think is probably the most common when you're dealing with a divorce case, because that's what this podcast is about. When it's a divorce case, what are the most commonly hidden assets or things that people get tripped up on that help them in their case?
I think right now it's going to be crypto. And that's, it's becoming more and more, even though it's been around for a bit now. When it comes to hidden assets, what I'm seeing is cold storage wallets where people are putting them in a safe and, quote, forgetting about them. Or they forget about the password to unlock it, the seed phrase, whatever they need to get access to it. Suddenly they've forgotten. That seems to be the most common forgotten about asset or a hidden asset is cryptocurrency.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a guy that reached out to me he's a total nerd when it comes to cryptocurrency. And him and I had a great talk about, how to subpoena, because that's the business I'm in, is subpoenaing and how to subpoena the crypto. Have you done any of that? Have you subpoenaed crypto? What's been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, you can send subpoenas to like Coinbase and, those companies. What you get back is what they have if they don't fight you. And I have not gotten pushback from them, but sometimes that's not where you're looking. That might be where they're transacting, but that's not where the asset is unless somebody's using a Coinbase wallet. People are getting a little bit smarter and saying, if I have it on a USB storage and it's in my safe, who do you subpoena to get that information?
Right.
It's not going to be Coinbase. So in those kind of cases, you're looking at the on-ramps and the off-ramps more than you're trying to find where the asset is currently. So to get access to Ethereum or Bitcoin or, Monero, any of the cryptocurrencies, you have to buy them. You have to transfer cash into a crypto wallet to be able to buy them. That's the on-ramp. Then when somebody wants to use it, we're just not at a place in our society where you can go to the gas station and pay with a Bitcoin. Maybe we're getting there, but we're not there yet. So to get cash out of crypto into something you can spend, into something you can see and use, that's the off ramp. And so that's where like the traditional investigation side of a divorce still holds. You're following the money. So maybe you can't find the wallet, but you can find it because at some point they're going to want to spend it.
Right. And so it's really tracking all of those digital footprints. I know in the intro we talked a lot about that you had found over $4 million in hidden assets, without revealing any client like details or anything. But take us into that moment. It was like, what did you find? How did you find it? And what's happened to that client if the attorney if you didn't have the skill set that you had?
So the bulk of that was primarily one case, and that was a cold storage wallet. That's what I'm alluding to. Is you put it on a USB key. It's air gapped. It's not connected to the internet, and it's, unless somebody stumbles upon it and has the ability to unlock it, it's going to be forgotten about. And in that particular case, we had access to the Trezor wallet itself, the cold storage wallet. And then it just became a question of unlocking it. And there's, as you undoubtedly know, there's different discovery mechanisms that you can use to try to get information from somebody. And you can request access to a password manager that often is going to have those seed phrases in them. You can take a deposition and ask the question, how do I unlock this? You can issue interrogatories. You could ask the same information. At the end of the day, it does require the disclosure from the person that has the information. But at least in Illinois, the alternative is, if you are going to play cutesy with us as a court and not unlock this, and they can show me, they being the lawyer on the other side, that $2 million went in, I'm going to throw it back on the balance sheet as though it still exists, and I'm going to award that phantom asset to you, and then your spouse is going to be otherwise compensated, whether the asset exists or not. We call it dissipation, is the concept I'm referring to, and I think a lot of states do similar concepts. So I think it's a learning curve for judges. They don't want to take the time to figure out crypto and seed phrases, and if you're being cute with them, they're just going to say dissipation, it's back on the balance sheet, keep it if you want it.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper into that, because some people may not understand that concept, because I can't tell you how many people call me and be like, Becky, transferred this amount of money going this, and I'm just like, well, okay, just because it's transferred doesn't mean it's gone. Do you know what I mean? In the court's eyes, I should say. And that's what you were just saying, is that just because something has been transferred, there is that balance sheet. So can you talk a little bit more about the balance sheet and how the courts see the balance sheet in assets?
Yeah, so a divorce lawyer has, at a high level, a number of specific assignments. We have to identify all the assets in an estate. We have to classify them as being marital or not marital, and then we have to value and distribute them. Compiling a balance sheet is one of the most important parts of that process, because it's an Excel sheet that has a listing of all of the assets of an estate, as well as the liabilities. And so at the end of it, you've got a line that says, here's the net value of the estate. And then you know what it is you're playing with and what you have available to be allocated. Dissipation, at least in Illinois, is when you're using marital funds for a non-marital purpose when the marriage is undergoing a breakdown. So the best examples that I give people is, you go to Vegas, you throw it all on black and you lose. What you lost is dissipation. So if you go to Vegas and you put $50,000 on black and you lose, the court is going to find that to be $50,000 that you have dissipated, $25,000 of which was yours to do with what you wanted, but the other half was your spouse's. And so, but the effect of putting that $50,000 back onto the balance sheet as though it's an asset that exists, and then awarding it to the person that gambled it, the effect of that is you're putting the other half of it back into the other spouse's pocket, because you're awarding a phantom asset to someone. And that's sort of the remedy that someone has if you're dating someone and you spend a lot of money on them, or you're you pick up a drug habit or you're gambling. There's a variety of different categories of expenditures that fall under that dissipation category.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important thing for people to understand, because to understand how the courts see the value and the dissipation or of marital assets. Because, and again, I don't think anyone can guarantee what a judge is going to do, right? However, they usually will be able to look at that kind of behavior and then award accordingly, which is, at least from what I've seen too. There's one of the things too, that you have something called the Steel Fortress protocol. Explain this, what that is.
It's broad. So along the same lines of going down the rabbit hole of cybersecurity and privacy in full force when COVID hits, I started a privacy and cybersecurity consulting business called Steel Fortress. We give advice to people about privacy, about security, about things that touch on those issues, land trusts, LLCs, anonymous LLCs, things like that. And so that is a separate brand of my own. It's a passion project. It's a hobby, but it's also a business, and it does have consulting services and clients. The Steel Fortress approach, as it applies to the practice of law, is just sort of taking the principles, I would say, of privacy and applying them to discovery, applying them to litigation, because a lot of lawyers seem to trip themselves up on digital evidence. They trip themselves up on foundation and using evidence in court because they don't really understand metadata. They don't understand, who creates or owns a document. So that's sort of the proactive or assertive use of it. And then there's the defensive also. Clients very often come in at an initial consultation and they say, my spouse is tracking me. They have access to find my phone, or they have an AirTag on me. Somehow they always know where I am, or they're tracking my kid who's with me, and therefore they know who I am, where I am. And so they ask, they're looking to their lawyer for guidance and help. And most lawyers are either saying, I don't know, they're giving you a shrug, or they're pawning you off on a private investigator that maybe knows something about sweeping for GPS. But most of them don't. And it's an added expense, and it gets expensive when you're doing like a full home sweep. So some of that protocol is also just sitting with a client and saying, let's look at the permissions that you've granted in iOS, and to who and for what, and help them. There's a digital disconnect that happens incident to a divorce as much as a financial disconnect. So it's helping people understand these are the people you've shared your location services with. These are the people you've shared your photo albums with, and this is the kind of access that they still have as you sit here because you haven't revoked it. And these are like a better email provider that can keep your spouse out of your email box a little bit more aggressively. Here's a better messenger to communicate with me as your lawyer. So it's sort of like an educational process of helping clients to regain some of their privacy and independence through various software and hardware tools.
Yeah, that's what's frustrating is when you're married, you're wide open, you trust each other, right? And when you're going through a divorce, it now you've got to like readjust and close all those doors. And just like we talked about in the intro, is it's like they can use Ring home surveillance, right? To be able to surveil, to watch you or your kids. What's the one thing that, how, maybe this is the question I should ask is how does smart home devices and family tech being weaponized right now through the court system? And what should somebody do tonight? I know we talked about the Ring and other surveillance or other tags or other iCloud, things like that they may be able to, but how is it being used to weaponize in the court system?
It's mostly cameras. It's mostly surveillance. There's a little bit of AirTags that are still being used. I think Apple has done their best to close that door a little bit. Now, if I put an AirTag on you and it's not associated with your Apple account, it'll start to chirp. And, people did workarounds for that, and they took the speakers out of the AirTag so that that wasn't alerting people. So it's that too is a cat and mouse game with Apple. So there's a little bit of that, but it's more Nest and Ring and, forgetting who has access to your Amazon or your Google account. So who has access to your footage, and then what those are being used for is all over the board. I mean, there's people that are using those to say, you're not offering me the right of first refusal when you have the kids and you're going out. And I know that because here's the surveillance footage. Or you're here asking for spousal support, maintenance, alimony, whatever you want to call it. And you have an unrelated member of the opposite sex that you're cohabitating with. And I know that because here's the surveillance footage. So people get caught up in, let's divide the money, let's get my personal property, let's fight about the kids, and they forget things like, my husband still has access to our cameras, things like that.
Well, would you suggest that that's something that they consider before they're even considering filing for divorce or going down that road, is making a list of those things? All the different cyber connections that you have?
Getting a list and having an understanding is a good starting point. Mm-hmm. Somewhere in that process, some people get carried away and they cross the line from like buttoning up their footprint and their exposure to destroying evidence. So I'm never going to tell someone like, go delete your surveillance footage. That's spoiling evidence, and you're going to have a problem there. But if you're just cutting off access to the evidence because your spouse moved out and they don't need the ability to log in and see what time your Amazon package was delivered, there's nothing wrong with that. Worst case scenario, the spouse who you cut off access to comes into court and says, that wasn't the status quo, I want that restored. But then you're going to have to explain to a judge why you need access to surveillance footage on a house you don't live in anymore.
Right, exactly. That's what the other question I was going to ask you is, how are the judges really handling this new level of, you mentioned a little bit about the crypto. They're like, I don't want to go into that because, a lot of people don't understand it. But how are they dealing with the evidence that are being brought forth because of these different digital footprints that people are able to bring in for evidence now?
I've seen one judge restore access to surveillance after it was cut off. That was the only judge, only case, only time. Barring that one case, I think for the most part, they don't want to get involved in that unless you're forcing their hand to do that. Mm-hmm. But like bigger picture wise, how are they handling digital evidence? Not very well. They don't understand it. They're counting on the lawyers to make them understand it. And on both sides of the fence, usually there's a lack of understanding about digital evidence in general. So sometimes someone will offer into evidence something that maybe lacked foundation, and there's not a good objection. And so it comes in and the judges don't need to figure out, was this right? It's only when you have someone that understands these issues that can articulate an objection that makes sense to a judge that you make them put on their thinking cap. But for most cases, they're not called upon to have to know very much information about it.
Do you think more people are going to get specialized in this kind of cybersecurity when it comes to family law?
I doubt it. I think what's more likely is lawyers taking CLEs that are specifically targeted to lawyers' needs of understanding. Like tomorrow I'm giving a CLE to the Chicago Bar Association about authenticating digital evidence. So I see lawyers having a need to understand at a high level, what is metadata? How do I use it? How do I argue an objection about it? But outside of that, like your run-of-the-mill divorce lawyer probably doesn't have a need of understanding like penetration testing or firewall configuration or things like that. It's just more like, how does it actually apply to a divorce case? Then I can see a need for educating on the subject.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you doing that. There was another guy that I had on the Divorcing Strong podcast too that teaches CLE, and CLE, it stands for, I think it's education.
Continuing legal education.
There you go. Yeah, continuing legal, and you guys do that every year. So it's good that there's resources out there like yourself to be able to teach the legal system. And that if somebody is dealing with a high conflict divorce, are there any particular questions that they could ask their attorney if they suspect that there's a lot of hidden assets, or is that something that most attorneys would give to a forensics attorney, or sorry, a forensics accountant to do?
A lot of lawyers are passing that off, but I think it's important to have at least a general understanding from a lawyer. If you're in like an initial consultation with your lawyer, just asking about their general experience with like cryptocurrency and digital assets in general. And if they squirm or the alternative, and they'd say, oh, I've done this a bazillion times and here's what's going to happen. Either one of those is a red flag in my mind, because judges do wild things every day, all day, and who knows what's actually going to happen. But a lawyer should at least give you a candid, here's my experience, here's how many cases, even if it's not like an accurate, I've done 31 cases that involve crypto. If it's, yes, I have dealt with this, or no, I haven't dealt with this, should give you some level of understanding.
Yeah, I think that's important too, is to know, because no attorney, nobody knows the results of what a judge is going to do. And that's the scary part of getting to that point and letting that judge be the one that makes the decisions on that. I think that's that can be, and you deal with a lot of litigation. I mean, meaning you're in court and you're fighting in front of a judge. Any advice for people that are headed that way, or they know that they're going to have to fight in court and litigate rather than, dealing with things outside of court?
I would make sure you have a lawyer that has done it before. A lot of lawyers sell you a bill of goods on the initial consultation, and then trials tomorrow, and you're finding out, well, I don't really do trials, or I've never tried a case, or I'm going to have to bring in someone else to help me, or we don't have the resources to get this ready. You want to know that from the start. Yes, a litigation firm, a big law firm, can pick up a case that's set for trial next week and do our best. But it's much easier if we built the case from the ground up, as opposed to having to inherit it and try it when somebody else built it. So making sure you're in the right place from the start is the best advice I can give. And sometimes that's easier said than done, because you're saying, I don't have $20,000 to walk into a big fancy law firm and pay a retainer, so I'm going to pay a lesser expensive lawyer for now. And if it heads there, then I'll reassess. That could be penny wise, dollar foolish. You could end up having to pay more on the back end to clean up the effort of doing it on the cheap the first round. So hire the best lawyer you can from the start, build your case from the ground up. You're in a better spot.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming today. This has been very informative for me as well, because I think it's going to get crazier and crazier, I think, when it comes to digital assets and understanding how the court systems are working and how the different attorneys are working through that. So that's really important. So here's my last question for you is, what does Divorcing Strong, with all your experience that you've done over the years, what's Divorcing Strong mean to you?
I think coming out the other end, recognizing yourself. A lot of people get lost in this process. They become someone that they don't recognize. They take on the emotions of their spouse. They become vitriolic, and it's like a tit for tat kind of revenge seeking behavior. You want to feel vindicated. You want, you have a lot of feelings about the situation, and that part's normal. But coming out the other end and being the person that you recognize, I think is important, especially if you have kids. So if I'm thinking about what a strong divorce is or divorcing strong, I think it's recognizing yourself after and ideally throughout the process.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because it is my real message is that they can come out on the other side a lot stronger if you're deliberate about it and you get the support that you need around it. So thank you. And can people just contact you through the website that's there below?
Yes, it has all my contact information, and I live on my devices, so I'm pretty quick to respond.
Nice. You've got a digital footprint. And I did notice that you are on most all of the different platforms, the social media platforms. So, or your firm is. And so make sure that all that information is there in the show notes to contact and reach out to Jonathan. And thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for the effort and being willing to advocate on a more litigation side, because that's not what everybody's usually doing. And hopefully we don't go there, but when they go there, we're glad that people are like you are out there helping people. So,
well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hold on just one sec. Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for joining another episode of Divorcing Strong podcast. I've been your host, Becky Sampson, and with Jonathan Steele. Wow. Okay. So that is amazing. If you are dealing with a lot of that, the issues of having a digital footprint out there and it being used against you, please reach out and learn what you need to so that you can protect yourself. And I also really love the part that he had talked about is that we maybe don't think about all of those digital things that we're connected to making sure that we're protected and unwinding those connections so that you can protect you and your family. So thank you again for joining us for another episode of Divorcing Strong, and we will see you on Thursday. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.